Hey everyone. One of the questions that I get asked a lot from students that work with me, students that get tutored with me through TutorN, just students that I come across, one of the questions that I get a lot is how to take notes. So to be completely honest, I am not one for traditional note taking, and very rarely when I work with my students do I show them traditional note taking. So if we're working on different concepts or ideas or topics, whatever the case is, we're not taking notes in the way of highlighting the entire book, the whole chapter, writing down a bunch of things on paper, and then we end up with notebooks or pages that are equally as large as the book that we got it from. So I'm not one for that. What I am really big on is concept maps. And so with a concept map, how does that look? It's like taking all the information you have in your brain, putting it down on paper in an organized fashion, and bridging the gaps and kind of making the connection. So an idea of a concept map is to take an idea. And so let's use congestive heart failure. Let's say this is our idea, right? And we want to build on this big concept. We want to put down all the things that are applicable to CHF. We want to piece together the bigger picture because that's really what that's about. Concept maps are really great because you can make one for just one idea, one topic. You can also use it to continually build on something else. And I'll show you more about that. So there are a couple of things that I always include on a concept map. So what is it? Signs and symptoms, treatments, risks, teaching, and nursing considerations. These for me are just constants that I always keep on my concept maps that I create. Now you can add more to it, you can have less, that's completely fine. But these are just kind of the basic things. So CHF, if we had to put, what is CHF, right? What is congestive heart failure? In really simple terms, and that's the point of a concept map, keeping it simple, right? We don't need to be very wordy and write verbatim what we find in the book. We can just read the book for that, right? So what is it? So let's say this is, it's an ineffective pump of the heart. And I like to make pictures and whatnot. So ineffective pump of the heart can be left, can be right, can be both. And specifically, we're talking about the ventricles. They're not pumping very well. So signs and symptoms. Well, I know that I can have left side issue, or I can have right side issue, or I can have a both issue, right? So what are some of the signs and symptoms I might see of that? So if I'm thinking about the left side, I'm thinking about, okay, the left side of the heart is receiving blood into the left atrium from the lungs, and it's supposed to be pumping blood out to the body via the left ventricle, right? It's supposed to be pumping out. But if my left ventricle is not doing a really good job squeezing anymore, right? Then that blood's not going to make it all the way out to the body everywhere where it should be because it's going to be a very weak squeeze, and it's going to start to back up to the lungs. So one of the classic things that we see in left-sided heart failure, and we hear this all the time in nursing school, right, is we have those crackles. And now we have those crackles because the blood is backing up to the lungs because it's not being pumped out effectively to the body, right? And on the right side, I'm just going to put the big things that we talk about most often in nursing school. Would be JVD on the right side, right? Jugular vein distension because, all right, I'm thinking the right side of the heart's receiving blood from the body, and that right ventricle should be pumping the blood out to the lungs. But if it's not doing that, now I'm going to start to back up. And if I back up to the body. And that's why I say the JVD. Now we can list out all the signs and symptoms here, right? And that would be a good idea for you just to list out a couple more signs and symptoms. Treatments, okay? So we think about, well, on both ends, right? We're having fluid overload, whether it's too much fluid back to the body or too much in the lungs. So one of the things that we talk about is Lasix. We always have to consider the underlying cause. Underlying cause is going to be this ineffective pump, right? So how do we fix that? Digoxin. So DIG, right? So here's some treatments. And so as you can see, as we're going through the concept map, I'm making pretty small abbreviated notes. And I'm taking everything that's in my head and I'm putting it down on this map, and I'm going to build on it. And what I can do, and what I suggest that you do with concept maps, is if you come across a topic or an idea or whatever that is a complicated, thing for you to understand, you're really having a challenge understanding it, try a concept map. Make out the big points. You can start off with just using these: the what is it, signs and symptoms, the treatments, the risks, all of those. Start off with that. Start off with the things that you know that are in your head and put them down in your map. You can reference back to your textbook that you're using or whichever resource that you're using to help to fill in the blanks. That way you have a bit more of a robust map if you feel like you're really lacking in some areas. And this is going to help to make the connections. The idea is, again, to see the bigger picture. What's happening here? I know what this thing is, but what other things are going to happen? What can I expect these outcomes to be? How do I fix this issue? What do I have to teach the patient about this issue? What do I have to remember as a nurse? Now, one of the things that I said about a concept map that's pretty cool is that if you want to, you can just have one map for just one idea. And so you can have, several different maps on different pages. You can have different notes for different things, or you can use it to build off for other things. So for instance, if you wanted to now start to talk about digoxin, right? Well, you can branch off with digoxin and start to add certain things like the heart rate consideration, right? And how digoxin works. So really increasing the pump. And that's one way that we can start to utilize the concept map as well. It's just looking at some of these bigger ideas and branching off, especially if we're having a hard time understanding why we use that certain thing or why we see that signs and symptoms. So if you were having a hard time understanding why do we have crackles on the left side, you could branch off there and you could say that the blood is backing up, right? Backing up to the lungs. And so what you're looking at here, I, in my professional and personal opinion, really find this to be the most effective way in note-taking, because this really, really presents to you right in front of your face. All right, this is all the information I have in my head. This is what's going on with this concept, this idea. These are the things I'm going to see. Why am I seeing these? What can I expect? What's every consideration that I need to take into account when I'm talking about this thing? And what it will do for you is, especially when it comes down to testing time, to your assessment time, if you get thrown a question or a scenario about this concept, right, CHF, you're really able to think about it. You're really able to pull from your knowledge bank, and you're able to bridge all these ideas together and critically think effectively so that you can answer a scenario question because you know what to expect. You know the bigger picture of that idea. So I do recommend concept maps very heavily versus regular traditional note-taking. Give it a try, see how you like it. Any questions, let me know.